Well, hello and welcome everyone to the SPL Waiting Room, your one-stop shop for all things SPL, and Phase 3 is going to be kicking off. Of course, I'm going to be GoreMiser. Joining me a little bit later on the show is going to be Myflin and Dave as we talk about a few other things, some in the past, some in the future. But for right now, we are going to be looking at the fact that it's Phase 3. You saw the video before the intro part, 9/17/2021. That's today, and Phase 3 is going to be a very fun one for us. If you remember way back when, Phase 1, it feels like so long ago at this point, we did an initial round robin. All the teams played each other once, and then that filtered into a group stage where the first and second seed chose the opposing team's group, and we're going to be doing that exact same format, except the group stages this time, they're going to be best of fives. Top 3 from each group is going to be able to move to playoffs. Everybody else, well, is going to have to go through a placement round for Worlds. Top 2 from playoffs will make it to Worlds automatically, but that's some talk for way down there. Just remember that this is going to all matter. Seeding is important for these first 4 weeks, and then starting week 5, we're going to be kicking into best of 5 territory for the regular season. This one is the one that does matter the most, though, because now not only is it just going for the group stage, but then the group stage matters for the playoffs, but then the playoffs matter for Worlds. Every game from this point forward has that weight behind it. If you make one mistake, one loss, or you don't think you should have, you're going to be feeling it a little bit later down the line throughout the phase. So every team showing up with their A game for the rest of this phase. I'm excited to see what I have. Of course, here you can see Blues Ultra. It's Blues Ultra on Twitter, on Instagram, and on Reddit to be able to find all of these beautiful graphics. This is a good recap for something that we are going to be talking a little bit about later today, which is the playoffs. You can see not just how the players performed, which I believe, off the top of my head, I remember Paul, 4.8 KDA. I know Zap, and I believe Cyclone Spin were tied for the most kills, things like that, as well as team objective control, and, of course, the gods, the builds, and everything else you might need to know. Always fun and always helpful to see those, but we also have a couple more people over here to talk to me about these playoffs and specifically the Titans and what we're going to have. We got Myflin, we got Dave. Myflin, you seem to be feeling pretty good.
Just in peak performance here. Yep. Mm-hmm. You see that?
We came into the studio and you were like chowing down on banh mi, and you were just like, "This is the best sandwich I've ever had."
It was good. It wasn't the best banh mi I've ever had, but it was good. Here's the thing.
And it was $6. That was the real key.
They didn't pay me, but I'm gonna plug them. It's from a place called Pho-tastic Pho. That's awesome.
Okay. That is good. That is solid, and I will be getting a $6 banh mi.
I wanted to really pivot into something that we were talking about earlier, but I don't think I can do that here on the show because it is
correct.
It is not for this. Hey, Dave, how you doing?
Fantastic.
That'll be my pivot instead.
I'm doing great. Look, Phase 3, very excited for it. What's going to be interesting is watching if there is carryover momentum from the Phase 2 playoffs into the first couple weeks here of Phase number 3. Suddenly, the Titans might be the front runners, and I think that's a big storyline to follow with.
It's going to be a fun one to watch. I remember this one because I was talking about it on the SPL rundown, which was that the Titans are on a 6-set win streak as of right now. So going into this phase, they've been doing pretty well the last couple of times they've played, and that starts us off with these playoffs. And so this is one that was a little interesting to me because, Dave, it was the Titans taking on the Dragons, one that a lot of people, it's kind of a toss-up which one's going to be able to come out on top. Some people leaning very heavily in favor of the Dragons, and then they didn't show up the way we expected them to.
No, not at all. And I think it was such an interesting set to watch because, the Dragons showed up early, and then later on in the set, it was not particularly close at all. I mean, if I'm remembering, game 1, the Dragons kind of rolled over the Titans, and it was very close to being that same way in game 2, and then the Titans turned things around and then won 3 straight games throughout the back end of this set. And I think it raises some questions around this Dragons team moving forward, and I think solves some or answers some questions about the Titans team, where for the Dragons, now you're wondering, all right, Phase 3 matters. You got the group stages, you got the qualifying tournament, then you got the World Championships later on, Phase 3 playoffs in there. This team has got a lot of tournament brackets to run through, the Dragons, in coming weeks and months. And so now it's time for the Dragons to kind of shore their feet up a little bit and find some footing despite going down early. But the Titans really, and that's who we're talking about here, they show up big, and they showed mental resolve. You go down big early in game 1, you stay in the game in game 2, and then you sweep the Dragons in 2 straight games after that. It's a very scary team.
And what was interesting was, you look at it, and they didn't have an easy time, Myflin. Like, they had to go against the Dragons. They beat the Dragons, and then it's like, all right, here's your prize. Play the Kings now, the number 1 seed. Something that, in theory, shouldn't have been very easy. And yet, most of the games, even the one, like, it goes 3-1, but they're all, like, 17-2 in terms of kills. Like, one team just really controlled all of it.
Yeah. It's not often I get to disagree with production straight up, but it says right here, I'm looking at the screen, Kings looked strong. 100% disagree. The Kings did not look strong. I'd argue that was some of the worst performance we've seen from this team in recent months. They felt like they weren't really trying to get proactive on the map. They weren't really utilizing that aggressive style that they had used in the last couple of weeks of the regular season to find that first seed spot. I thought that Twig out of the jungle was nearly absent for the majority of that match. I mean, the only real standout player for me was Big Man Tings, who is consistent throughout the entirety of this year so far and was not any different here at the playoffs, kind of doing what I hate most when my coaches back in high school would say, yeah, you guys all suck, but this one guy did good. But that's how it went down this time around.
Sure.
The Camelot Kings just kind of a little bit of a quiet performance, and that's not to take away from what the Tartarus Titans did. I think had the Kings even played a little bit better, I think the Tartarus Titans still come out ahead just because of how strong they have been looking throughout the playoffs and how strong they've looked in recent weeks. But they didn't get tested in that set.
No, agreed.
And that was the weird thing I want to say about both of the first 2 sets. Like, you go up against the Dragons, you go up against the Kings, everyone's like, all right, this is going to be hot. Especially, like you said, Dave, when the Dragons, like, 20-minute rolled over the Titans, it's like, all right, we're in for a show.
Right.
And then nothing really slowed them down. And I'll be honest, they make it to the finals. They look incredible in Game 1 on Friday. They look incredible in their game on Saturday.
Yep.
And then they go up against the Leviathans on Sunday, and Paul, I'm just going to say it this way, Paul gets Tiamat in 4 games.
Couldn't believe it.
And that seems to be enough to set up the stage.
Yeah, that is the thread, I think, coming out of the Phase 2 playoff finals is that Paul played out of his mind on a pick that you don't want Paul playing out of his mind on. Like, at least if you're putting Paul on, like, a slightly lower tier mid laner and he's playing super well, they're not as good as Tiamat could be. But Paul lost 1 game on Tiamat this set, 1-3. And I think now you can kind of retrospectively look back at this entire weekend. The Titans played 3 of the top 4 teams, right? I mean, they went through the Dragons, the Leviathans, and the Kings, all of them 3-1 in best of 5s. You're telling me you dropped 1 individual game against the top 3 teams in best of 5 sets this entire weekend. The Titans made everyone look kind of bad this weekend. The Leviathans did show up. I think the Leviathans put up the most fight out of the other or all 3 teams that the Titans played this weekend. But it was, I don't know, it didn't feel particularly close. The Titans team in the Phase 2 playoffs just had something extra rolling for themselves. They are playing a fast and a calculated brand of Smite that nobody could keep up with.
And, hey, it worked for them. Not only are they able to take down all of those top 3 teams, they get their Phase 2 playoff win. And now they get to go into Phase 3 with the fire hot on their heels. But the question, I think, on everyone's mind, because they had tested this early, Myth, was Sino coming into the jungle. I think that at this point they have absolutely moved layers in to be permanent. And so the question was this overall, like, better for them? Would Scary D have been able to hit this point for them when they needed it to, or has Layers just been such an overwhelmingly positive pickup for them?
Look, the narrative around the Tartarus Titans as a whole team is that they are a super team. Since conception, every single caster, if you can go all the way back to that caster prediction video, we said, this is a super team, stacked talent, and we had not seen it until recent weeks. I mean, they really waited until quarter 4 of 2021 to start showing up as that team, and it happens just as soon as Layers joins the squad. Is that a coincidence? I don't think we could say so. No. They won playoffs, man. They won the playoffs as a dark horse. Maybe not so much a dark horse as a couple people had predicted that they would show up with Layers on the squad, but I think that it's just a good change. Can Scary D, could he have gotten to this level? Maybe. Would he have gotten here this quickly? Absolutely not.
Yep. Dave, feeling pretty good about Layers, especially going into Phase 3?
Agreed. I mean, it's now that final question there. Going into Phase 3, was this flash in the pan? Because we've seen teams in the past who have struggled during the regular season and then show up big during tournament events and then end up winning the whole thing. So it's this weekend and then into next weekend. I need 2 weekends of data on this Titans team. not to determine if it was a good change, because it was. They won the Phase 2 playoffs, and that's rubber stamp of approval for sure. But looking forward to consistent good performances, if they're going to be the favorites to win the World Championship, that's what I need a couple weekends of data on. Good change, yes. Long-term good change, I think so, but we'll find out in a couple weeks.
I know a lot of the discussions that I've been hearing have been around the okay, but let's see what happens after they lose, right? Like it's like you've been winning a lot overall with layers. What happens when that loss happens?
Exactly.
How well do you bounce back from it? Things like that. So that's always something to keep your eyes on over the next couple of weeks. Of course, layers is not just the only jungler I think to look at. I think junglers as a whole are a role that we need to be looking at, because right now, and for this week, for everyone who's we're playing on the 8.8 bonus balance. I believe 8.9 goes live next Tuesday. So this week will be 8.8. Next week will be 8.9. But for 8.8, there's a couple of changes. Dave, I know you were looking at some specific ones. The nerfs,
yep.
I think Moja, Osiris got hit. Like a couple of these top end picks that have been kind of stripped away.
Yeah, actually, a lot of the balance is around picks that are huge at the SPL level. A few of them stand out to me. Gilgamesh, Morgan Le Fay, Osiris, Umoja all got changed. Ymir had a slight change as well. Could be important for a couple supports. I think the Umoja change is sneaky, pretty big here. Notably, River's Rebuke cooldown went up, so that's notable. But I think most notable is the Omi change, where you're no longer, you can still heal with your auto attacks, but you're no longer getting that percent bonus healing when hit with the auto attacks, and so alternate sources won't be boosting up that healing on your auto attack targets as much. I think that's pretty impactful, especially with some of the big healing comps that we've seen. You pair a Umoja and an Artio together, and you get these massive healing numbers, things like that. So I think Umoja's pretty important here. But Gilgamesh, I think, kind of stands out most to me in the bonus balance change here. Three abilities get changed with him. Winds of Shamash, the slow is decreased, and the cooldown goes up. And so you're going to have to wait a little bit longer for those ganks, for the ultimate to come online. And then when you get somebody in the ultimate, not going to be quite as slow. So I think that's pretty important. And then the scaling as well on some of the damage in Gilgamesh's kit, notably the drop kick, they get decreased, the percentage scaling down a little bit on that. So a couple of these gods definitely will take a knock. I think Gilgamesh utility-wise still pretty strong, but you're not going to be seeing him deleting carries necessarily on cooldown.
And it's interesting because he was already starting to slip in terms, like some teams had him, like he was still in their top 6 bans in games, they're still a number 1 pick, and then some games we just wouldn't see him at all anymore, and so it's interesting to see what's going to happen to him. Myflin, I know, not only in 8.8 there were some nerfs, but I know in 8.9, nerfs? In 8.9 there are going to be some buffs, some changes to the jungle. I think that's really what we're kind of getting into. This first week we might not see it as much, but going into the next few weeks, your Sam for Soccer's, Layers as well, like a lot of these other players that maybe haven't had the impact. Layers shouldn't be lumped into that. He just won a playoffs. So like Sam, who maybe didn't have the playoff or the impact you wanted, Panatom, who didn't get to show up as well in the finals as you would expect. A lot of them are going to get to step up and showcase something different.
Yeah, so in 8.8 bonus balance, we saw a Void Shield nerf, and I know a lot of people on Reddit or in the community said, why are we nerfing junglers right now? They're not as strong as they should be, and it's because of what's happening in 8.9. There's a distinct shift in that they don't really want warrior jungles, these tanky hybrid jungles, to be the meta, and instead it's more so towards that hyper carry style, and that's kind of reflected inside of the itemization changes, broad, sweeping changes that should affect how the jungle is played, as well as a couple of XP shift changes that makes it a little bit easier for you to farm out inside of the jungle. I think this will open the door for guys like Sanford Soccer to go towards his signature picks of Mercury again, these hyper carry style gods. Layers can go back towards things like the Thor that he was known for inside of the Smite Console League. I think it really does open the door for that style of play. And when jungle sees such a change as this, when jungle completely shifts their identity away from this facilitator role and more so into carries of their own right, that is going to have a ripple effect throughout the entirety of the meta. Mages, hunters, everyone is going to feel very differently in how it is scaling throughout the game. I think that it's very possible that we see games go a little bit longer now because junglers, as warriors, generally come online a little bit more quickly. Around that second or third item, you're really starting to hit your stride. That's your power point. Well, with junglers being hyper carries now, it's that 4th, 5th item that you're keeping your eyes on. I'm excited to see how it pans out.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. I'm just excited to see like what variety we're going to have. So far, it's been a lot of like Gilgamesh, Osiris have been like the top 2 junglers, I think, overall over the last few weeks. So just a change of flavor. I think there's like an Wheelish buff, and I'm like, Sam plays that already. If there's item changes as well, maybe we'll get a little bit of that. But that's going to be happening next week, and we'll have to wait a little bit for that again. 8.8 bonus is what we're playing on this weekend. I'm also going to throw it out there. Charybdis, Arachne, and Cthulhu are 3 gods that are banned. Charybdis from new, and then I don't know what it is with Arachne and Cthulhu, but they're banned. So that's something that you can know, and that'll be helpful for you going forward with it. Now we can move into Fact Seat Gaming.
Oh, it's my
now,
turn.
this is a very fun one to do because we're at the beginning of a phase.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to look at the year as a whole so far.
Oh, geez.
Instead.
Those are big numbers.
Yeah, they're kind of big numbers overall. So the first question is, who is the most picked god in Season 8?
Who's the most picked god in Season 8?
Osiris.
Yeah, you might be right, because you have to take out like high ban rates here. Like, it'd be easy to say something like Tiamat, because when available, it's always picked, but also banned out pretty frequently. Would you say Osiris? I'll say Gilgamesh.
You'll say Gilgamesh. Well, you would be right. Gilgamesh has been...
Was I close? Do we know?
You know what? If the laptop had Wi-Fi, I'd be able to tell you. The laptop does not have Wi-Fi right now, so I can't actually pull that up, but I can tell you that Gilgamesh has played 103 games. I think that's actually... It's either 103 or 104. I can't remember. I had messed something up in one of my notes. When I wrote these, I think I'd fixed it after the fact. But he is the only god that has over 100 games played this year. I think the next was maybe Fafnir at 90 or something like that. Someone was close, but they're still like 10 off from being able to eclipse.
That's all I needed. That's all I needed.
Oh,
I can get everything else wrong.
Yeah? You're happy?
Maybe don't do that.
All right. Well, let's see how you do with
don't
this one. You should get this one right. Both of you should.
Oh, no.
Oh,
Don't
no.
say that.
Come on, bro.
Gore. Come on.
Who has been the most first-picked god this year?
Gilgamesh. No way he goes Gilgamesh back-to-back on answers, right?
The most first pick god
Oh,
is
right,
that overall or
that's
only
a good
when they're
point.
available?
No, just
Like, overall. Like, just in general, this year, one god has been first-picked the most.
It's
Picked
probably
first.
Tiamat.
Yeah. And this, like, initial, like, first pick, first slot. Like, number 1 over 10.
Yeah, but there's a lot of way the math could break down on this.
Tiamat.
Like, Tiamat might have been first picked like 20 times, but she's banned out all the time. So
Yeah, but like Gilgamesh, I feel like when he does get
Tiamat.
picked is
I'll
like
agree
usually
with
in
Myf.
like second
Tiamat.
or third.
I'll agree with Myf.
Good, because that's the right answer.
No, we did it. Oh, thank God.
She's been first picked in 38 games. I think the next was maybe Yamoja, something like that. Again, if I had it up there, it would be. But again, it was like another 10 difference, a big drop-off. Fun fact, Sun Wukong has been first picked once this year. That's just weird to
Was
me.
it the Valks?
It was the Valks.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it is
Good stuff, Ducky.
it's just weird to me to know
Ducky
that
pick.
has existed. All right, so which team has played the most games this year?
A lot of 3-game sets.
Is that including like LAN events, like
Yes.
playoffs?
This
Okay,
is
so
every
it's got to
game.
be someone that's been winning.
I think it might be the Titans. I think even
Really?
even when
I will say everybody's pretty close. Like they're all in a
Yeah.
certain range.
but it's all year.
Oh, games not set.
yeah, games not sets.
Right,
That
but
is important.
including playoffs, right? So like the
Yeah.
Titans would have 3 more sets over teams that either didn't make it or didn't make it very far into the playoff event, right?
But they also got knocked
They
out.
got knocked out
at
super
the very
early.
beginning of the first playoffs.
And
Why
in
am I
the
helping?
early
Wait a
seasons,
minute.
they were
Bolts.
getting
I'm
2-0'd
saying
a
bolts.
lot.
I'm saying bolts.
You're
I'll
gonna
go
say bolts?
Dragons.
You're gonna say dragons?
I'm saying bolts.
Well, Myflin, you get to walk away with this one. I guess. Wait, this is a tie now because it's
Free
2-2.
It's so free.
They've played
Whatever.
78 games so far there for the Dragons. Everybody else, like they're all in this range. Like a couple were at like
was gonna say
75,
Dragons.
73, and the high 60s as well. But it's the Dragons so far who have played the most games, most 3-game sets, I guess, overall this year. And now it's time for the bonus fact, the one that I don't actually know what the question is. So this is going to be fun for me because this is your chance to break a tiebreaker. But then also this, which buff has been killed the most in Season 8? I think I know the
Green
answer.
buff. Just kidding. Gotta be speed, right?
Junglers are on point with the speed
Right.
buff. That is just facts. But
But red and purple buff get invaded a lot.
no,
Or
it's
blue
speed.
buff
I'm
gets
going
in-
speed.
Yeah,
Locking it in.
I think speed just because of junglers and how they are.
I'm going to say blue because I want to be different.
There you go.
And we'll see what the answer is. It's speed.
Yeah!
buff. Then red, then blue.
But they're
Look,
also close.
Speed's the best buff. It's just the best
That
buff.
is, honestly, if I was
also
going to
close.
list it, that's probably like the exact order I would have put it. I would never have been able to give you any numbers, but I would have like speed makes sense because junglers are always on point.
Wow.
Everyone always has a speed buff.
It's
Red
funny, there's
buff makes
actually
sense.
A decent little drop off. There's 4,900 for speed in red, and then there's like 200 less blue and then like 300 less purple. That's interesting.
Hunters don't know how to farm, man. Your brain degenerates when you just have a wave coming at you, bro.
Yeah,
Junglers,
right,
we have to work for everything we get. So when speed buff spawns, we're there.
Yeah.
Hunters our cup runneth over with farm, man. They got waves, they got harpies,
There's
they
a
got
Draugr
oracles,
over there.
They got a Draugr.
Yeah, you're right.
They're busy, bro.
They're busy.
And yet, mid's always the one hitting level 21st. I wonder what's up with that, Myflin. I don't know why I turned that to you. Dave's the one who plays mid.
He's the mid
laner. Actually, been playing more Hunter than mid recently. I think I'm starting to sway.
Oh.
I'm starting to sway Hunter.
Oh.
We'll see how aggro feels about that.
We need, when we put a caster team together, we gotta
have
have
to have
someone
one for each role.
Yeah,
Wait,
that's right.
Me and Hindu got to duke it out. There's no way I'm going to solo lane,
I think-
dude. I suck at that. I
think
throw him
J-Max
out.
also support, I believe.
Yeah. I have no
Well,
idea.
see,
We'll
so
find out.
I'm support because mechanically I can save people, but I can't carry anything. Yeah, we got to move on. Whatever. So we're going to be looking ahead now to what is Phase 3, Week number 1. We'd show you the standings, but everyone's at 0, so it doesn't necessarily matter. Instead, let's look at the schedule. Today we're going to be watching the Dragons take on the Valkyries, and then a little later the Bolts take on the Warriors. And the rest of the week, Kings Leviathans, a nice little top matchup for us immediately starting off Saturday. Warriors Titans, Leviathans Valkyries, and then Titans Scarabs to close out the week. And I believe Kings and Leviathans is one that we wanted to talk about
Yeah.
because it is such an interesting match. First off, Kings and Leviathans both get knocked out by the Titans in the last playoffs, but this is a team in the Leviathans. They just got their first finals, a team in the Kings that didn't necessarily look as good as we would have expected.
No.
What can we expect out of this set, Dave?
Man, and I'm nervous to go to the predictions here in a second because honestly, I can't remember.
I can't
which way
remember what I
voted on this.
said.
Here's how I hope I voted. I hope I voted on how these teams looked the last time I saw them, and that is a much better looking Leviathans team against the Titans, despite the same scoreline than the Kings team against the Titans. I think the Leviathans look better coming out of the Phase 2 playoffs than the Kings did against the Titans. I imagine it'll be close, that being said. I mean, I think ultimately this is one of those games where it just depends which team shows up on any given day, but if you have to make a pick, I think Zapman is playing some great Smite right now, had some great performances, especially against this Titans team, or the Titans team in the Phase 2 playoff finals. I think the duo lane will be a bit of a brawl here. Zapman, Netrioid should be some fun to watch. Both of these supports between Wrong Yu and Genetics have been playing some pretty good Smite as well. So I think it is a close matchup, but in my personal opinion, recency bias, as of now, we'll see what I predicted, leans to the Leviathans.
It's actually interesting that you mentioned Zapman and Netroid, because to me that's the one that maybe stands out the most, because Netroid, like Zap, had, like you said, was tied for top kills with Cyclone
Right.
Spin, I think, over the playoffs, but had just a phenomenal weekend. Netroid didn't, is the best way to
Right.
describe it. I mean, just like, it was not the performance that I'm used to seeing out of Netroid. I mean, it was something that was uncharacteristic for the Kings as a whole, but I think the duo lane specifically really didn't kick off the way they wanted to. That's going to be tomorrow at 1 p.m. Another matchup, and I believe one that is going to be LAN this week, Myflin,
Ooh.
is going to be the Titans, our nice most recent champions, taking on the Scarabs, which, look, you're looking at a team that didn't make it to the Phase 2 playoffs and a team that just won the Phase 2 playoffs. I actually think this might be closer on paper than it should be.
It is.
Look, Inbound has recently gone on record as saying that he thinks he is going to end this phase in at least the top 5 spots. That is a significant increase from what we've seen from the Scarabs in the past. And for some odd reason that I cannot put to words or explain in any meaningful way, I believe him. Like, I think that the Scarabs do have a
He's
little bit
really
more in the tank.
trustworthy.
Yeah, maybe it's just that raw charisma that Bobby has.
He
but-
smiles at you and says something, and you're just like, yeah, you're right.
So I'm expecting some good stuff from the Scarabs. Do I think they're going to win this set up against the Titans? No. Do I think it's going to be a close set? No. But I think it will be a good heat check for how the Scarabs are going to look for the rest of the phase and how much improvement we could have seen while they were biding their time, while they were waiting and watching the playoffs. I'm sure they were doing some pretty decent practice in their own right.
And it's on land,
But
too. What a
long
oof.
short, Tartarus Titans, yeah, they're winning that. And I'm not going to
should.
mince words. It's going to be pretty quick.
They should win that. I think it could be close. The Titans should win. But I think I agree with you. I think that the Scarabs team has something brewing, and that's a good thing. They have something good brewing here And I expect growth over Phase 3.
I'm hoping either a close 2-0 or a 2-1. If it's going to end up being like an inevitable, the Titans might win it or will win it, I guess, because we have our predictions, so we know how we all
Please,
voted.
Leviathans.
We'll see how it goes. Hey,
I thought I was the one person. I saw
just me, huh?
I saw
Just
Kings, and I thought it was me. I was the one person who said Kings.
The only difference.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That is glaringly loud on this
Bro, they
screen
were the
of
first
everybody
seed.
else agreeing.
Community.
Well, look, it kind of makes sense. Overall, you've got these matchups, like when you see Leviathans versus Valkyries, most people are going to lean towards the Leviathans. The Kings and the Leviathans is the only one that could be a coin toss. Do you, know why? Is it just the fact that they were first seed regular season, or what's going on?
I think that their regular season play is a lot better than their playoffs play. I mean, we saw that exemplified in the last couple weeks. Maybe you don't put too much merit in the very last week of regular season, as standings really weren't on the line at that point. But the Camelot Kings have done enough good throughout the year that I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. They woke up on the wrong side of the bed on the day of playoffs, and that's not indicative of how strong they are as a team. And legitimately, if I'm telling the complete honest truth, when I was voting on my little sheet, it has the logos on it, and I just really like the Camelot Kings logo.
It is a good logo.
It's just
a
good.
great logo.
It's got good colors as well. Well, hey, that's going to be happening tomorrow. That's tomorrow at 1 p.m. that we're going to be watching that one. But we do have some matches today. Again, the Dragons taking on the Valkyries. The Bolts taking on the Warriors coming up in just a few minutes. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with the SPL.